Welcome to Cross Life Church. If you would like to learn more about Cross Life Church, please visit us at www.crosslifechurch.net.
Thank you, Brother Miller, for the opportunity tonight. I'm Josh Williams. I'm just going to go ahead and give my name, a little background information. First of all, what an awesome church y'all have. Brother Dwayne, you're blessed, buddy. You're blessed. Being a preacher's kid, I know when the Spirit of God's moving, and my gosh, y'all are blessed. Y'all are very blessed. A lot of people don't have this. But like I said, I was raised a preacher's kid, and how many know preacher's kids are trouble most of the time? This one was. This guy here was. And being a preacher's kid from birth, you're born into the ministry. And being born into the ministry, you knew right from wrong. You knew when God was in it, when He wasn't. You seen the fakes come and go in church, and you seen the real people, and you seen the ones that stuck by you. And then, of course, when you get to school, we knew better was said a lot. A lot of times, I'd have a buddy tell me, well, you can't do this because you're a preacher's kid. Well, hey, bud, I ain't no different than you. I believe I can. and I would. But being labeled a preacher's kid puts you in your own category from day one. I mean, you're just expected more of. And so having that heavy of a burden as a kid, and especially growing up in Oklahoma, and of course, we're just right across the border from you, so I believe I can relate to a lot of you tonight. But growing up in Oklahoma in the Bible Belt, anytime we done wrong, it got shouted from the rooftops, and still does. But it had its benefits, though. We traveled all around the United States and got to see things that most kids never had the opportunity to see, and I enjoyed it. I remember as a kid, Dad, he made us a little, pretty much a bed in an 88 Cutlass Sierra, and he just manufactured his own little bed for us. And then when we got tired, and he got tired of hearing us, we just sat down there and laid down there, and he'd lay either up in, of course, I know y'all can't do this now, but we used to lay in the back of them, like where the tail light was at. And when Dad hit the brakes, well, we come falling down. But Dad, he made us a little bed back there, and we'd travel all over the United States because of Dad being a preacher. And it just, those memories will last me forever. But in high school, how many here is a football fan? Okay, got a few. Probably some Razorback fans. I'm sooner born, sooner bred, and I'll be sooner dead. For all you Arkansas fans. But you don't ever get a response when you say something about Sooners and the Arkansas fans. You just don't get no response. It's just dead quiet like it was just then. But we got to travel all over the United States, and I enjoyed that. But football was my main, that's what I wanted to do. That was my first desire that I wanted. It was one of those things that's just something I wanted to do. In high school and growing up, I remember 1996 was the first year that I actually stepped on a football field, and I was literally hooked. But how many knows he says he'll give us desires of a heart? In Psalms 37:4, David writes, "Take delight in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart." And he did that for me. I loved football, and in high school, as a senior, I finally got to be a starting defensive end at 5'8.5", 161 pounds. Boy, I was big, wasn't I? But I enjoyed it, and I had a heart and a drive and a work ethic, and I took no for an answer. I wanted to be on that football field, and that's where I thought I belonged. So God gave me that desire at an early age, and I got to live out sports, and it was athletic. But how many knows too? People do a lot of hunting here in Arkansas and Oklahoma. I'm a big hunter. I love to hunt. Most of the time when I'm sitting in the deer stand, I'm talking to God because it's just me and Him. But I love to hunt. I love the outdoors. And like I said, growing up in high school, I love football, but I like to go bow hunting before school in the morning and even when we got out of school. And sometimes I was glad we didn't make the playoffs so I could go to rifle season and not have to worry about it. But I'm going to get into some things here that some of this stuff is hard for me to talk about. Some of this stuff is easy to talk about. But shortly before I graduated in high school, I started having some problems. Just not big problems. Just I started dabbling a little bit in things that I knew I didn't need to be messing with because, like I said, as a preacher's kid, I knew better. But like I said too, I'm the one that people talk about. All those bad preacher's kids. I was that one, and automatically I drank a beer. That was the first thing I ever remember doing that I felt that was just the sin of all sins, and it literally started taking me down a path right then that I really didn't need to go down. And how many knows, have we got any Chevrolet fans in here? Anyone Chevrolet fans? Okay. Well, when I was in high school, I was lucky enough that my dad bought me and my brother our first two vehicles. He had a 96 Camaro and I had a 1995 Chevrolet 350 Silverado baby step side. I loved it. It was my favorite truck of all time. And that truck got me into more trouble. But just like my heavenly father, my earthly father wanted me to have the desires of my heart, and my desire is to have a bow tie on the front of my pickup, a Chevrolet bow tie. And anyway, I could talk all night long about the Chevrolet pickup, but playing football was a big deal to me, and like I said, it was something that I loved. But after I got through with the football, there wasn't nothing left to do, and I got into the beer. Well, after that, it was something else. I started and it was actually an early addiction of mine. The first two addictions was alcohol and then sex. Before I could graduate, I lost my virginity, and it was one of those things that was probably the hardest thing I've ever had to tell my parents, because after I got to a certain age, I realized if you just tell Mama what you're doing, she won't worry about you so bad. But I remember telling her for the first time, setting her and Dad down in the living room there in the house, and literally saying, Mom, Dad, I lost my virginity, and knowing it was going to be hard. But how many knows that's not something you want to tell to a preacher and his wife? Because not only is my dad my father, but he is my pastor as well. And that's something that was really hard for me to explain to him and know that I'd done wrong. But enough about that. The thing about that I liked about all the high school and the football was God give it to me. But shortly after, I remember for the first time in 2004, after I graduated, feeling just like I was mad at God. And that year, we had 4 deaths that was real close to us. A best friend of mine, a guy that was like a mentor, a guy that was literally a grandpa to me, and then a young girl that was 15 and got killed in a car accident. And I remember just asking God, why? Why would this happen, to me, but why would this happen to this community? How would you let this happen, and why would you allow this? And I remember that was the first time I remember being mad at God. Anyone ever been mad at God? I seen one hand. Y'all's all probably going to go to hell for lying in church. But we get mad at God, right? I do. I get mad at God when I'm having problems and I don't feel like I'm getting the breakthrough I need. I get mad. But I remember that was the first time I literally became just mad at God. And so shortly after those 4 deaths in our community, I took a wrong turn. I took a big wrong turn and started drinking a lot and started doing a lot of things that I didn't need to be doing. I know we have kids in here, so I won't get too blunt. But there was things that I knew I didn't need to get into, and the alcoholism, the sexual addiction that I developed at the age of 18 became very strong in my life. And how many knows in small towns, it's the beer drinking, that's the first thing kids pick up, and that's what I literally started doing. But after the beer drinking and the back roads and the country music we listened to, it was the bar room. I found the first bar room at the age of 18 as well. And I loved it. I absolutely just loved it because it was something that I'd never experienced, but it was literally get your little liquid courage in here, grab a mic, do a little karaoke, and have fun. And I had fun. I enjoyed it. And I've got this down here, Backroads, Bars, and Babes. That was me. I mean, that was me. That's what I wanted to do. And so I've done it the best I could. And after graduating and getting into the bars and all that scene, I always, in all this time, from the time I was 15 and a half and until I had my accident, I always had a job. Dad always instilled a big work ethic in anything we done. Didn't matter what it was, but he believed we had to have a job. And he told us, I bought that pickup, but it's your job to put tires on it. It's your job to put gasoline in it, change the oil on it. And so I did. But from 15 on, I had a job. And after I graduated high school, I started logging. And I know there's a lot of loggers around here. I've seen log trucks all day long and clear cuts. It's kind of like Oklahoma. They just clear cut everything around here anymore. But I started logging and running a skidder. And how many knows logging pays pretty good too if you're working good? If it's good wood, you're getting paid good. And at 19 years old, I was getting paid very well. And how many knows when you got a little bit of money, you might be able to afford a 6-pack. When you got a lot of money, you can afford a 30-pack. And whenever I started making a lot of money, well, then I started fueling those first two addictions even more. I started literally, and I was kind of the life of the party guy. I wanted everyone to have fun. And if you didn't have $1 to give for a case, well, that's all right. It's on me. I got this. And so I wanted everyone to have a good time, and that's because of the job I had, because of what God given me. I had a great job, and I got to have my fun, But anyway, after I worked in the logwoods for about 2 years, I left there and started working in a little machine shop there in Poto, my hometown, and stayed there for about 8 months and literally hated it because I was inside. It was like putting an animal in a cage. I did not like it. I'd worked out in the logwoods long enough that it was about every month you moved to another location. Every month, 2 months, you moved to another location. It was something different you got to see every day. And every week it was a different part of the property that you got to see. So it was something that I really, really enjoyed, but I needed to party a little more. I needed not to have to get up at 4:30 in the morning and get in at 9 o'clock at night. So I come home and took a job right there at the house, 7 to 3:30. Didn't do nothing. I'll just be honest with you. I did not do nothing and just sit in that machine shop and drill a few holes in some metal and do a little polishing on some metal. And I literally hated it. And I had a buddy call me one day and said, hey, he said, man, I'm down here in Odessa, Texas. And he said, I'm working in the oil field. He said, you need to come up here and get you some of this. And at the time, like I said, I was a partying guy, and he went to tell me about all the fun he'd been having and all the money he'd been making. So, hey, sign me up. I gave my notice there at the machine shop, and 2 weeks later, on August 15th of 2006, I broke out in the oil field as a roustabout in Odessa, Texas, and had a great time down there. I'll skip over all the details, but after I was a roustabout there for a while, which roustabout all we do is we just built the rigs. We just literally built the rigs and got them ready to ship out to the oil field and for them to be worked on them. And after I worked there for a while, they finally assigned me to a rig here in Arkansas, a little town called Appleton, just not too far from Russellville and Atkins area, Morrilton, all right in there. And then when they got me there, we kind of bounced around from kind of rig to rig, and finally they sent me back down to Odessa and had another good time down there. And they sent me down there to work on what was rig 9, the rig that I was on. We brought it back down to a little town called Hector, Arkansas, just across the little Louisiana Bayou over there. And we stayed there for probably about a month, and that was home. And just like football, football thing I liked about football was it was a brotherhood. It was something, it was a team effort. Whether you was achieving victory or accepting defeat, it was a team effort. And just like logging, just like being out there in the logwoods, it was a team effort. I mean, everyone's got a job, everyone's got a purpose, and if you work right and you work good around each other, it's a well-oiled machine, and you make good money. And so it wasn't no different in the oil field. And I loved the oil field. I tell everyone if I still had a knee, I'd still be in the oil field because I literally loved the oil field. I loved that camaraderie. I know it was rough, but I literally loved that oil field. And as I was, like I said, some of this is hard to tell, but as I started making good wages in the oil field, I moved up quick. I went from, pretty much the bottom of the food chain to, right up there with the rest of them, making good wages as a motorman and loved my job. But on August the 13th of 2007, everything changed for me. I got a scripture here, and everyone probably knows it. John 10:10. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. And on that day, I remember they supplied a rig van for us to drive out to the rigs, and we stayed in a man camp. It was the stinkingest, nastiest place I ever lived in my life. About at any given time, 120 men staying in a camp. Yeah, it got pretty stinky, but they took good care of us. But on that day, we was driving the rig van, and I was in the driver's seat because I drove the fastest. And I'm a drag racer as well. I love to drag race. I'm kind of just a man's man. I just like to do outdoor things. I like to get my hands dirty. I like to go fast. But on that day, I was driving the van to the rig. And as we got close to the rig, and I realized what day it was, I said, "Boys, watch out! It's Friday the 13th." And when I said that, little did I know that those superstitious words would haunt me for the rest of my life, because shortly after, about 7 hours after, actually, we were running casing. And those of you that don't know what casing is, it's actually what you use to, after you finish the well, you can cement the well in. You do all kinds of stuff out there in the oil field. I could sit here and try to explain it all night, but I'll skip over all that. But we was running casing that day, and we had a third party out there, which third party is someone other than your drilling company out there actually helping on the rig. And they had their own tool up in the derrick, which is the big tall thing you can see from miles away. And ours was a super single, which means it just had one 30-foot stand of drill pipe. Instead of like your doubles and triples, they have 2 and 3. And ours was a super single, pretty slow, was ran with a boom, and just literally the boom would go up and go down. And we had what you call a top drive that would climb up or go up and down the legs of the derrick, and then would actually twist into the pipe, and then you would, so on and so forth. I could try to explain it all, but I won't. But anyway, at that day we was running casing, like I said, and we were actually having to stab the pipe about 12 inches, having to actually grab a hold of it and then let them connect up and then spin into it. And we had 2 company men that day. We had, like I said, a third party there. So we were trying to do everything to the book that day. And we stopped there for a little while and discussed, the top drive being out of alignment, and finally figured out, well, someone's got to go up there and adjust it. And so, why not me? That day it was sleeting and raining. It was just pretty chilly, that kind of like this weekend. Just kind of chilly, rainy, and a little sleet in the air. And it made it even more dangerous. But like I said, they decided to adjust the top drive, and I did. I went up there to the top and climbed in the derrick and walked across and got on the other side. And you have what you call a driller's side, which is which side the driller can see, and that's his side. And then you have the off driller's side, and it's just the opposite of the driller's side. And that's the side that I had to go on to adjust that side. And as I got up there and started adjusting it, another guy come up with me, and he adjusted the driller side, and anyway, we finally got it adjusted like what we thought we needed to have, and we decided to start going back down. And I literally walked back across the derrick and was fixing to head back down the ladder and be done with what I was told to do. And I was that kind of guy, though. I was literally, if you told me to do something, I didn't care how dangerous it was or how hard it would be to do. I just done it. If someone tell me to do a job, I done it. And as I'm fixing to walk back down and climb back down that derrick, they called back up and said, "Hey, we need to adjust it just a little bit more. That way we don't have any more problems. And we do it now, we won't have to do it later." Okay. I remember cussing them, just saying, this is ridiculous. I shouldn't even be going back up here, but I did. And went over and sat down. And literally, as soon as I got set down and started adjusting again, on those rigs, you have a clutch that engages that top drive to make it go up or down. And when you're in a derrick, that's probably the only sound that you do not want to hear is that clutch kicking in, because that top drive is fixing to go up or it's fixing to go down. And when it does, if you're up there in it, God help you. And that day I was up there, and when he clutched that rig to go up, my right leg was actually sitting on the top drive, and I was sitting on, I'll call it just a girt, I'll call it what it is. It's just a flat metal piece that makes up the derrick, and then up above me was an X girt. And so I was sitting on the flat piece, and the X was just right up above me. And as I'm sitting there and he clutches this rig, I know I am trapped. I ain't got nowhere to go. And shortly after, I lost my limb, my right leg. And I won't get into no details because it's a little gruesome. But the thing about, like I said, I was in a position where I couldn't escape. How many knows that that's how the devil wants us? He wants us in a place that we can't escape. He wants us in a place that we have no way out. And I was sitting over here a while ago, Brother Miller, and I just had something come to me. How many knows, as being Christians, we literally we try our best, and we feel like we fail Him every day. How many know that's just the way we feel? That's just life. But as I was sitting over there in worship all going, I thought, man, I need something, God. And in the Galatians 6:9, this is out in NIV, and it says, "Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." And on that rig that day, when this all happened, I can remember one thing for sure. I never cried out to God, not one time. Being raised as a preacher's kid, I should have been screaming to God, and not one time did I ever scream for God or for God to help me, not one time. And whenever the accident happened, of course, I'm up in the derrick, and they've got several hands down below me, and I remember the first guy coming up and saying, "Oh God." And I remember just the way he said it. I knew this man, and I remember the way he said it. It wasn't good. And to make a long story short, they finally come up there and they tied my leg off with the belt and the rope and got the bleeding to stop. And they finally brought a forklift up there, and it had a telescoping boom, and they telescoped it up as far as they could, and then literally dragged me into the forklift in a man basket. And after they got me in that man basket, the ambulance had already arrived. And the thing about the oil field, most of the time was at least 30 minutes to an hour and a half away from a hospital. Well, that day I was in Clinton, Arkansas, and I was only 2 miles from the hospital. And anyway, they finally got me that ambulance, and by the time they got me the ambulance, it was 16 minutes. And I've asked several doctors through the years, how long did I have after after your femur bone is broken in half and your femoral artery is severed, how long do I have? You had 4 minutes. And they said by the time they got the bleeding to stop, there wasn't much bleeding left. I'd literally bled out up in the derrick. And like I said, it took them 16 minutes to get me into the ambulance. So I had well enough time to bleed out 3 times. And as they get me in this ambulance, I remember calling my dad, not being able to talk. But I remember before I called my dad, they literally, I could hear them saying, "We've lost him." And I'm hearing all this, and I thought, "You ain't lost me, I ain't going nowhere." And I said it out loud. And I remember, like, one guy was checking the pulse in my neck, and a lady was checking my foot and checking if there was a pulse there, and there was people checking my hands, my wrists, and they had no pulse. And like I said, I heard them say this, so I told them, "You ain't lost me, I ain't going nowhere." And I remember pulling the phone out of my bibs that day and calling my father and just pushing send. And when I opened my mouth, I couldn't talk. And so I handed it to the EMT that was there in the ambulance with me, and he closed it and handed it to my driller. And my father called back and told my dad what had just happened. And I don't know about y'all, but that's one of them phone calls. If this was the other way around, I wouldn't have wanted to hear. And that day, like I said, it was raining, it was sleeting, and shortly after, it literally became a monsoon. It became a downpour, and my parents didn't know for, about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, maybe longer, that I was even going to live. And I remember after they got me into that ambulance and they got me to that little hospital there in Clinton, and thank God for that hospital. But they got me to that little hospital in Clinton and figured out that they could not help me there, so they sent me to UAMS in Little Rock. And when I got there, they took care of me. But before then, when they come wheeling me out of that little hospital in Clinton, I remember what that doctor's face looked like, and I remember literally the sheer terror on that man's face, knowing that I probably wasn't going to make it to Little Rock. And when you see that on a man's face, I read people pretty well. When I look at your faces, I kind of read people well. I kind of know just a little bit about you before I even shook your hand or met you. And when I seen that man's face like that, I thought, oh my gosh, I am in trouble. But they wheeled me out of that little hospital, and I remember getting in the back of that second ambulance to go to Little Rock, and I remember hearing those back doors shut in that ambulance, and I remember just laying my head straight back, and when I did, I closed my eyes, and then I turned my head to the right. When I looked to my right, there was another man. And see, before when I was on the location, there, like I said, there was a guy in the front checking the pulse. There was two guys beside me, and then there was a lady outside between the doors checking the pulse of my foot. Well, she later on we wanted to thank the EMTs, and she was never even to be known of. They'd never even had a female work for the EMT. But that was 4 people, and how many knows 4 people in an ambulance? That don't happen. That just does not happen. And after they closed those doors and we got in the ambulance and I looked over and there's another man, when I seen him, it was just an automatic like, all right, I think I know who you are. But it was just like meeting one of y'all for the first time. I could literally make out what he looked like, but where his nose and mouth was at was completely white. Just like one of these lights here, just blinding, literally blinding. And I remember seeing this bright light, but it wasn't blinding enough that I couldn't look at it. I could look him just square, just right at him. And I remember asking, God? And it's just like yeah. And I said, am I going to die? And he said, no. And I said, well, am I going to lose my leg? And he said, yes. And after he said that, like I said, he was sitting beside me here in the ambulance. And how many knows there's not a lot of room in the ambulance, especially for a grown man his size. He would probably, if he was standing up, I probably would have put him at about 6'2", maybe 215 pounds, just a pretty good sized guy. And he literally bent down on both knees and stuck his hands around my shoulders and started to squeeze with his hands. And whenever that man touched me, the feeling that I had was something that I can't even begin to explain to y'all. But after he stuck his arms around my shoulders, well then he literally climbed up on that bed with me and laid flat out on top of me, belly to belly, and began to squeeze my shoulders even tighter and tighter and tighter. And when he did, he bent over and whispered in my ear and said, let's go to sleep. And I woke up about a day and a half later in Little Rock Hospital with 92 friends and family members around me. And see, the thing about that situation was, I should have been feeling all kinds of pain. The trauma had done set it in, and then by then the shock had kind of died off, and I should have been feeling all kinds of pain. But whenever this happened, I never felt not 1 ounce of pain. The only thing I can remember feeling is the weight of him laying on top of me. That's the only thing I remember feeling. And after he told me, we're going to go to sleep now, and I woke up in that hospital. After I even woke up, it's like I could still feel him laying on top of me. And I could look around and see people my friends, my family, and remember seeing everyone in that hospital and remembering what a peace I felt, not just a godly peace, but just a comfort that, not only did he have me, but my family was there for me, my friends was there for me, and I can't tell you how many people wound up coming to the hospitals through the year of me having my accident, and how many people called and prayed, and how many churches worldwide literally prayed for me. But after I had like I said, the accident happened on April 13th, 2007, and after that accident, June the 10th, I walked again on a prosthetic, and of course I'm not wearing a prosthetic today. I will be soon. Hopefully in March I'll be getting refitted. I will be getting refitted in March, thank God. But I walked on a leg in just a little over 2 months, just a little under 2 months actually. And yeah, it took me to do it, but I had so much help to get to where I was at, and the therapists and friends and family, like I said. But after I got through with the accident, after I'd finally come out of knowing and realizing that this is what you're going to be like for the rest of your life, I kind of understood that and handled that. But after that, in 2009, I was at home, and this just kind of come out of the blue, but my mother and father was going to a minister's meeting a few hours away, and before Mom walked out the door, she just thought, I better check on him one more time. I was living with my parents at the time, and before she walked out, she just thought, I have to go check on him, and she come back in there and found me lying dead in my bed. And I've talked to a few doctors since then too about that accident, and they said I could at least been laying there at least 15 to 20 minutes. And when my mama found me, I had not one pulse. I was not breathing at all. I'd done several different colors, and I had my body began to release fluids. I'd been there for a while, and they actually, finally got a pulse. My brother and my dad, and my mom, they finally got a pulse, and finally, got me back breathing. And I went through some struggles after that one that I wouldn't even begin to try to talk about. But shortly after 2009, just 2 years later in 2011, in the first accident on the rig, it had also broken my left hip, and that hip had developed a disease called avascular necrosis, in which it deteriorates the bone, and that hip joint deteriorated, and I had to have a hip replacement. So in 2011, I had a hip replacement, and after I had the hip replacement, like I said earlier, I got mad at God, and this is one of those times I remember getting so mad. Why I got this pain? Why did you allow that to happen to me? Not only once, but twice now, and now I'm having a hip replacement at the age of 25. Come on, dude. What else? And shortly after, I became highly addicted to prescription painkillers. Highly addicted. About 3 years of it, just literally every day, highly addicted. And in 2013, March 28th of 2013, I overdosed. And that was the hardest out of every one of them. It was one of those deals that I put myself in that position. And I was the only one that could have changed myself at that time, but it was just something that I literally, when I first started taking painkillers, it was to numb the pain. But then after a while, it was just to chase the high. And I became highly addicted. And like I said, I overdosed. And I remember when I got back home and they told me, Josh, we don't think you can just do this on your own. We're going to have to get you some help. And I remember getting just mad at my dad, thinking, I just got out of the hospital. What's the deal? Why? And that was probably one of the hardest things my dad ever had to do, was to take me out of that house and go take me to a detox center. And they wanted me to stay 5 days. I stayed 8 because I wanted to beat this thing. And I stayed 8 days, and here we are nearly 3 years later, and I'm sober still. I haven't touched a pill, and thank you. As a bumpy little ride, I will not lie. Addictions are crazy. Addictions are just, wow. It grabs a hold of you in a different way. And I don't care what the addiction is, it's an addiction. And if you have an addictive personality, like I do, it can be the death of you, just like it was for me. But after I OD'd, I literally I knew then that I've got to start changing, but I just really didn't want to. And about a year and a half after I overdosed, I wrecked my pickup. And as a night, I went out and threw me a big drunk like I was 19 again. I felt real young one night, and I felt like I wanted to go party and do a little dancing at the bars, and so I did. And on the way home, I fell asleep and went off the road. And see, the thing about that too, from day one, God had me. And that night when I wrecked right in the middle of town, the little town over in Oklahoma, and wrecked right in the middle of the town. God hid me, literally hid me. All you could see was the black plastic piece on the top of my tailgate, because I'd fell right off in a little hole where no one could see me. And when I woke up, I didn't know where I was at, because literally I was off in this just hole. And at the time, I had drugs in my pocket. I was drunk, and they would have taken me to prison if they'd have found me there. But I remember Dad and Mom coming pulling me out. And I was just a ball bag. I was literally just did not know what to do. I'd never been in a position like that to where it was, again, my fault. And I remember after that, they got my truck pulled home, and we literally got to the house. And I knew right then, after everything that's ever happened to me, after all the times God's brought me out of something, and I've never truly given Him my all, I knew I had to start then, or this was probably going to be the last chance that I had to make a difference in the future. And when I got to the house, and me and Dad got in the shop there, like I said, we like to work on cars and drag race, and we just went in the shop and just had a father-son moment. And we talked it out, and he said, "Son, you know what you need to do?" And I said, "Yeah, Dad, I do." And he led me right there in the sinner's prayer at the age of 29. I was actually just turned 29, and he led me right there in the sinner's prayer. And I remember for the first time in my life that it actually stuck. I wanted to be different. I wanted to change. I realized what God had done for me for the first time. I realized that everything He had done for me was a purpose, and the things that He had allowed to happen, it happened, but I'm still here. I'm still talking to y'all right now. How many knows that? Thank you. In every one of those, the times that I died, like I said, I've talked to several doctors about this, but I called a buddy the other day, and he said, "Man, pretty much you're the 5-minute man." He said, because in every one of your situations, he said, after 5 minutes, you should not be here. You should not be talking. He said, even if you was here, he said, you should, be in a wheelchair and not, comprehend anything. He said, literally, that or 6 feet under is where you should be. And after, like I said, after I finally committed to God, it was just a few months ago in November, we had the One New Man Conference, and some prophetic words were spoken over me. And I remember telling my mom the Friday night before, "Mom, I just need a word." How many knows if we want it, if we ask for it, God's going to give it to us. It might not be in our time, but when we need a breakthrough, we need that moment, and we're ready for it, and we're aligned where we need to be, God's going to come to us, and He's going to give us an answer. And literally, I was one of the first people that was called out for a prophetic word, and the things that was spoken over me is things I already knew, Doc. It's just things I already knew. And it was just confirmation of, hey, it's time. It's time to start doing what you're supposed to be doing. It just took me 30 years, but here I am. And the thing about all of this, I've got some scriptures written down in here, and the things, these are scriptures that we need to have on our fridges, in our cars, in our bathrooms, on our mirrors in our bathrooms. But these are just some that just really stands out to me. And this one's 2 Corinthians 12:9. "But He said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, just like I'm doing right now, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, because how many knows I was weak in those moments, so that Christ's power may rest upon me. John 14:27, peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. And I've got another one here in Matthew 11:28. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. In every one of my situations, those three scriptures applied. And it's something that those three scriptures will be heard all over the world now. And I believe that the things that God has called me to do, like I said, we're right here in Arkansas, and I live just across the border in Oklahoma. I believe I can relate to people because of the way I was raised, the kind of a man that I am. And I believe God's appointed me and equipped me. See, all that didn't happen for a reason. And see, I told this testimony once in 2007, but at the time I wasn't equipped. I was, but I wasn't. And see, now I've got even a bigger and better testimony than I had before, and I'm to reach people and those that are lost. And the thing about the things that happened to me, yeah, they were hard. It was hard to come out of. It was hard to conquer. It was hard to accomplish. But with Him, all things are possible. And I could go into another story, but I won't. But this is something too. After Dr. Miller here asked me to do this, I ain't gonna lie, I was scared to death. I was scared to death. And I was scared to death for the first one in Poto, and then the second one in Cabot. But I realize that's 3 now, and it's going to be. I think it'll get easier. I think it'll be something that I can get used to. But I think it's something too that I don't ever want to polish up. I don't ever want to tell it the same way ever. I don't want it to be the same thing. I want it to be something that can connect with people, and I hope I've done that with y'all tonight. This is something that also, how many knows when we want something, if we're lined up right and we're really trying to achieve something for God, He's going to come visit us. And I shared this story with Dr. Miller a while ago, but before I started all this, and when I got those prophetic words spoken over me, I realized I had to have a little more backup. And I knew I was saved, I knew I was going to heaven, but I needed the Holy Spirit. And I remember the first time I ever received the Holy Spirit was in 2007, laying in that hospital bed in Little Rock. And after I received the Holy Spirit, I can remember going through those years, and I might have prayed in the Spirit maybe 3 times in nearly 9 years. And the other night, just been about nearly 2 months ago, I was laying in bed, and I'd been reading the Word in Romans 8, and talking about denying the flesh and praying in the Spirit, and got to about the 28th chapter, and got tired, and rolled over and said my nightly prayers, and went to try to go to sleep, and I just tried to think of when was the last time you spoke in tongues, and it was laying in the bed in Little Rock, and like I said, I was laying in bed at the time, and see, I'm a preacher's kid, and when someone comes to pray for me, you better have your business straight, because if I don't feel like you do, I'm going to tell you, I don't want you praying for me. Straight up, I will tell you, hey, walk on off, go on. But I didn't want it to be an experience at the altar. I wanted it to be on my terms. God knows our hearts, number one, and literally laying right there in bed, I started thinking about the tongues, and I open my mouth and they come out. And my brother's sitting here on the front row, and after I received the Holy Spirit, how many knows we need to tell somebody when we get saved, we get filled with the Holy Spirit? We need to tell somebody about what He done for us. And I literally walked in my brother's room, woke him up, and he's a hard sleeper. He sleeps so hard. And I told him, hey, bro. He come up all weird, and I said, I just received the Holy Ghost. He said, congratulations, that's good. But right then and there, God said, you're back. And see, for a long time, When I was 17 years old, I can remember I was living for God the best I could live, and I was literally on fire for God. Couldn't have been any better. And from the time I was 17 to the time I was 30, I finally figured out the number. I hadn't felt that joy, that peace, that bubbly just feeling of you're yourself again. And so for that many years, I hadn't felt that. And when I told my brother that I'm back, I literally lit a shook out through that house. And if I'd have had 2 legs, by gollies, I'd have ran all the way to El Dorado if I could have. But I kicked that old devil in the mouth that night, and the devil at that time was my recliner, and I kicked that recliner as if it was the devil probably 4 times. We got a little old English bulldog that thought I was probably crazy, but he bent me over that night and worked me over. And the thing about that as well is, I had the hip problems, I had a dislocated shoulder and had some back problems. We all got problems, And the thing about losing a limb, there's always a pain called phantom limb pain. It's you don't have that leg, but you can still feel that leg, and that's been my biggest problem through the years, is having all that pain day in and day out. But now, see, the thing about getting relief as in phantom pain, it's if you could just move that foot, if you could just open and close those toes, oh man, it'd be so much better. I can now. He worked me over that night, right there in that house, and on my terms, he worked me over right there in my bed, and literally just come and give me a visit that I'll never forget for the rest of my life. But I appreciate y'all's attentiveness. I appreciate y'all listening to my story. Like I said, I'm no professional. This is just me. This is what you see is what you get, and maybe one day I'll get a little better, but the things about this too is there's no one's testimony greater than your own. And I don't care if it's telling it to one person or 1,000 or 10,000. There ain't no one's testimony greater than your own. And whatever it is you've went through in life, I promise you give it to God. He's going to take care of you. And the thing about, I've been speaking in a Hope conferences with the Caldwells, and I'll leave y'all with this. And all the things that happened to me, His grace was enough. And with grace, we have hope.
Thank you for listening to this message from Cross Life Church. If you have questions, need prayer, or would like to learn more about us, please visit us at www.crosslifechurch.net.